Alrighty, welcome back to Unity3D Concept to Completion. My name is Ernest Levland. I'm a technical evangelist intern at Microsoft South Africa. I forgot to book a room today, so I apologize for any background noise that you might hear. So, just a reminder for finding information and getting in contact. So, if you want to get in contact with me, you can find my social media pages and my blog at ernestloveland.co.za. And you can see the group members and discuss things with the group members on our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/MEA Game Champs. And I'll be posting the links to the videos in the group. So this is the fourth call today, and today we are covering 3D in Unity. This is building up on knowledge that we've done in the 2D in Unity session and at the start of the community session last week where we did some game design specific discussions. And from that today we're going to take a look at Unity's 3D features. So just a reminder, you're encouraged to ask questions and you should hopefully at this stage be building a game. So in some stage of the process involved, so designing or development at least. And the idea behind this is a lot of the base knowledge you would need has already been covered. Okay, welcome Shashank. So at any point, if you have to ask a question, if I don't notice the message, just speak up. You're welcome to talk. And I think we can get started. So I know that Manos has an idea. Let's just quickly go through the people that are on the call at the moment. Do you guys have any further ideas? Kendra? I guess that's a no. And Shashank, have you got any ideas at the moment? No ideas yet. And Panos, you're a new person? No, we can't hear you. Sorry, Kendra. Um, have you got any ideas at this point, Panos?
The same with Manos.
Okay, so are you two going to work together?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Have you guys taken your game idea any further?
Ernest, did you see the wireframes I sent you?
I actually... You sent them on Facebook, correct?
Yes.
I didn't look at them, I forgot. I was in meetings all day, so let's go take a look at them now quickly,
Okay.
just before we start on today's content. So if we go over here, two more comments. How did you send them on Facebook?
I think I sent them through a personal message, like a Facebook message.
And you probably did. Yes, you did. Okay, so let's just open that quickly. My computer runs really slow when presenting, I'm sorry. So, have a randomly generated map and some paths that you can follow. That looks pretty cool. Ceres
Um,
Jupiter 4. So
yeah,
each,
okay.
yeah,
Basically, the main idea here is that you start from this is the map screen, or like a very draft idea of the map screen.
okay,
The game is it's like mission based. It's like instance based. So you go on to different, let's say, planets, and you play like a small mission, and then you get back to the map screen. So it's circle there represents a different mission of sorts.
okay.
So
That's
if you start, um,
continue.
yeah. So if you start, like for example, from the central planet,
Okay,
uh, you get you get to choose like some different planets that are on the first circle where you can go, and probably these planets will have different sorts of attributes and environments. Like one might be a fire planet, or cold, or like a space station, or something like that. And probably also different enemies of sorts.
Okay, that sounds good.
What is the game's objective?
Yeah,
So,
I'll
just to recap, we spoke about it last week, and what they want to do is build a space shooter, a scrolling space shooter of
Oh
sorts.
yeah.
And it's a really cool idea, and it's nice to see that you've got some wireframes to work off of. So,
the basic idea has been expanded a bit
okay.
since then. So, and I'm trying to summarize the whole concept where it has went so far.
Okay.
Okay, so now you're looking at the in-game screen, which is pretty straightforward. It's like it's like a normal shooter game.
Mm-hmm.
The different the black and the kind of purple boxes nearby the ship represent the different sort of upgrades the user has accumulated so far.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Okay, this is like something like a shop screen. So the idea is that you choose planets to go, and you progress slowly far away from your home planet. And some planets are like normal planets where you just shoot stuff. And some planets will be shop planets, where you'll be able to spend your credits and change equipment and buy upgrades and stuff like this. So as you progress through the different I don't know, like circles in the first screen or in the map screen, you get to go more away from your home base, and the missions will become more difficult, and then also higher level shops will get unlocked with better items.
Okay.
You should also be able to backtrack probably on previous planets you have been before, either to get some achievements and stuff, or to accumulate more credits in order to buy weapons that you have not managed to buy yet. And we had another idea also that there will be some kind of small events. So if you go a little bit downwards, it's the last screen, where there is a random factor on the game where when you go to a planet, you don't know what this planet will be. It can be either a mainstream planet where you will battle with different creeps. It can be a story event, if the game will have a story mode also, where you get to perhaps do some small decisions, some small story decisions, or play some side quests. And there will be the shop planets, where you get to buy stuff.
Okay, that sounds really good. I like where you guys are going with this.
Yeah, that's what we've done so far, basically.
Okay, so Kendra says she's working on a Rubik's Cube of sorts. If you want, you can elaborate a bit on that. Otherwise, you can always do it at a later stage. It's up to you. Later stage, headset acting up. Alright, not a problem. So, we're going to then jump into Unity and get started with today's session content. And you'll see I've already got some basic things set up here. I just need to find where everything is. If I go back to my start scene. There we go. So I've done some very, very simple things. I got a friend to make these models that you see on the screen at the moment. And I set up this first scene just to use as a precursor. So if we just go take a closer look, I think it was this specifically that had the animation. Yeah. So going back to what we did with 2D and animation, where we added an animator component. So you can see over here, I've got my animator, and it's set to always animate. I've done the same thing in the animations editor, where I've got keyframes set to the different time intervals, and I've been able to move it up and down. Now you can adjust things in terms of just normal properties, but you can also do materials and things like that. Welcome, Asante. So the animation in 3D can work in the exact same fashion that we use it in 2D, so that lesson follows on directly. So when we start talking about things to do with cameras, we're going to look specifically, let's just minimize that and go back to our main camera. So if we take a look at this camera and take a look at its properties, there's something here called a culling mask. And this is something that can give you a lot of control over your game project. Now, when you set things enabled and disabled in your culling mask, they will either show or stop showing in your project when you run it for that camera. So just as a quick example, if I zoom back in here, it won't let me zoom in, so I hope you can see. This camera's culling mask is set to everything, default, transparent, effect, ignore raycast, and water. So it will show all of these things. But I can also add in layers. So what I'm going to do is in here, I'm going to select the, let's just see if I can find it. There's those are lines, there's a cylinder. Okay, so let's grab the 2 feet. If I take these 2 feet, I can change their layer. So by default, I've got the options default, transparent FX, ignore raycast, and water. But if I add a layer, I'm going to call this the ignore layer, and go back to those 2 feet, I can set their layer to ignore. So this is all in the inspector. And this means if I have the ignore layer unticked in my camera, it won't show in the game. Okay? So let's just go back out of that. So let's just go to the camera, and you'll see it automatically had ignore selected. So if I run it, we'll still see the feet, even though they're in a different drawing layer. But if I don't want them to draw, so in this case, I'm going to unselect the ignore, and I run it, you'll see that the feet are no longer visible. So this is how the culling masks work on the camera. There is, however, another thing that is important for us to know how to do. So, as you may have noticed if you experimented by yourself, you can have multiple cameras. So I'm going to, for ease, just duplicate this camera. So, duplicate, and I'm going to give these tags. So there's main camera, and there's secondary camera. Okay, I'm going to make myself an empty game object, and it's going to control which camera we see. So let's just this, add a component. I'm going to add a new script, and I'm going to call it camera changer. So let's just go to our project and edit that script. So what we're going to do is show how we can switch between these two cameras using scripts. Zoom in. Okay, so first things first, I want to disable the main, not the main camera, the secondary camera. So I'm just going to quickly get that secondary camera. So scam is game object dot find game object with tag secondary camera, and I'm going to do scam enabled get component of type camera enabled is false. Okay, and I'm not going to do anything in update, but I'm going to do onGUI for a button to do the opposite. So turn on the secondary camera and turn off the initial camera. So just quickly do this. If GUI button new rect 00 100 100. Let's just give it simple text. what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing where we've enabled it instead of disabled it, and we're going to take the primary camera, so main camera, and we're going to disable it. So main camera and enabled will be false. Okay, and if all goes well and I didn't miss anything, we should now be able to switch between the two cameras. So I'm just going to change, and if we go take a look, one should be enabled and the other disabled. And it didn't do it. Object not set to an instance of an object. Main camera. It's because they're both main camera. So if we just go back here, I wanted to make the one a secondary camera. So just run that again. Please ensure there's one listener. That's not an issue. So if we go back here, no error this time. And if we just pause it and get that message box out the way, you'll see the first camera is disabled. So you see the camera component got disabled. Whoops, my mouse messed up a bit there. And the second camera has been enabled. So this can switch between the two, but now we want to have a visual difference. So if I'm back here, if I restart the game, and I go from the first camera view, the initial one, to the second one, there's no change. So just to prove that this is working, on the secondary camera, I'm going to include the ignore. So if you want to switch between different perspectives that can see different things, this is how you do it. So if I click change, you see we get the feedback. So that's a really cool thing. It's very useful to be able to swap between cameras. It'll allow you to do cinematic sequences where you switch to sort of a video camera that moves around, or have the player character be able to switch between a first person or a third person camera, and things like that. Is there any questions to do with that? If there are, I'll answer them. Otherwise, in the meantime, I'm going to move on to looking at some of the 3D primitives. Alright, let's just see. Kendra's typing a message. It's all good. Alright. So let's head on to primitives. So I'm just going to get rid of this game object because I don't need it right now, and I'm going to get rid of the secondary camera and put back my ignore. So one really cool thing is Unity under game object create other has a whole bunch of primitives that we can use. So we've got a cube, which as you would expect is just a cube. We've also got a sphere, a capsule, which is basically a pill shape, and we also have a plane, which is a it's a large flat area, and a quad, which is like the flat area, but by default it's more like a wall, so it's standing up. And these are things that you can use instead of full-on 3D models if you build a 3D game, until you find an artist that is willing to work on your game. If you can make your game fun using these primitives, you're obviously not going to need to make any big changes to your gameplay to make it fun for players using real models. So that's one really cool thing that you can use. So we're going to use some of these things in conjunction with something else that's built into Unity, and I'm going to get rid of that model for now, and we're going to use what is called a terrain. So I'm going to go Assets, Import Package, and Terrain Asset. So the reason I'm doing this is just it gives me a whole bunch of textures and things that I can use, and these are things that I'll want to use just now to show you how the things work. Okay, so let's just let that import. Alright, so when you go Game Object Create Other, you'll see there is an option near the bottom called Terrain. So if you create a terrain, by default it'll start at 0, 0, and it'll be this plain white, and it's completely flat, and there's nothing really spectacular about it or interesting apart from the fact that it gives us great strength in terms of what we want to do as a game developer. So first things first, what I'm going to do is zoom out so I can see the whole thing. Okay, and this is not working out so great. Sorry, I'm fighting with my mouse, which is making it difficult for me to... There we go. Okay, can see the terrain now. So, if we take a look in the inspector, the terrain has a bunch of tools. So we can change the height, we can change the smoothing, there's a watering and weathering effect, there's a paintbrush tool for other controls, and there's a little tree symbol, and a flower symbol, and a star symbol. And we'll go through them one by one to explain how to use them all. So if we go to the first one and take a look, this is the raise lower tool, and there's a bunch of different brushes. You can set the size and the opacity, and all you'll do is click and it will change the terrain. So if I go like this, you'll see, if I zoom in here, that I now have slightly raised terrain there. And if you take a look at the instructions, it says you can click to raise and hold shift to lower. If we go to the next one, this will paint height, so you can set a specific height. So this won't go higher or lower, it'll go to a specific height, which is very useful. Then smooth height is sort of like watering it down, but if you make the brush big enough and solid enough, it'll flatten everything. And then there's the paint texture. So paint texture we're not going to use because there's a much nicer way that we can do it using the terrain editor. So just to take a quick look, another thing is we have this trees tool. I don't know if it's showing 100% for you guys, but it's little balls on top of sticks. And what you can do is you can place trees onto your map. So if we were to go here, we'd go edit trees, add tree. And what we want to do is just pick, for now, the palm tree, which comes in with the terrain assets. And if I click and drag, you'll see I've got a whole lot of trees that I've painted onto my terrain. So this is built into the terrain system. I didn't have to put anything in other than that. It's not creating hundreds of objects. This is a very, very cool tool that you can use for building your 3D maps. And similarly, you can paint detail objects. So if I go add grass texture, and I'm going to select grass 2. If I go down here so you guys can actually see it, and I go back into here, let's add that, I can add grass. So this is all within the terrain editor, and it looks pretty cool. Obviously, if you spend more time to get different 3D assets, different grass textures, that kind of thing, you can make a much higher fidelity map. But this is just more a thing of showing you how these tools work. So if I was to run this, the camera's not actually in the right place, you can see in the distance over here, there's my trees and things, and I'm probably still getting the maximum frame rate possible because Unity does things for the distance rendering that automatically optimizes it so it keeps decent frame rates the whole way through. So instead of drawing a 3D model that far in the distance, what it does is it draws a 2D version that looks like this would look like in the distance. And you'll see, depending on how you change those settings, when you walk around in this 3D world, that it can make a difference. So now, what we're going to take a look at is the final part. So that's the little star. So there's quite a lot of different things that you can change here. All the different distance, detail information, the materials and physics materials that you can use are all found in here, which is really nice. And there's things such as wind setting, size, bending, and you can change the size of your terrain itself. And one important thing to note is you can import and export terrain details to files, which means potentially if you want to go and work out how to do it, you can add in a method for loading all of your levels from height maps instead of building them in the editor. But we're not going to cover that today. So that's one of the cool things about the terrain. And if you go material wise, I don't want any of those. I need to quickly create a new one. Yeah. So let's just create a new material. And let's call it grass because I don't want it to look like this white. and I'm going to call it grass hill. And let's go back to our terrain. Set the material to grass. If we go to texture painting, we'll do this way for now. We can just say use grass, and we should be able to paint this texture on, though it doesn't seem to be working at the moment. I'm gonna have to take a look back at the texture editing, but otherwise this is the basics for building your terrain. So this terrain is pretty cool considering you can build 3D terrain, but it's kind of useless if you can't use it. So one thing that we're going to do now is we're going to use some more standard assets. So I'm going to go asset, import package, character controller. So we touched on this briefly last call, where I showed some of the things that Collins could use for his idea for a game, and some of the things that he wanted to use are available in this package. So if we go standard assets, character controller, you'll see there's a third person and a first person controller. So I'm going to add in this third person controller, and I want to move it up. So let's just see. I want its transform, and let's put its position at 0.02. Alright, so if we give this a run, one thing you'll notice is we don't fall through our terrain. So this is very important. Terrain on its own doesn't automatically, I don't think I moved the whole controller, I think I just moved. Yeah, I just moved the pelvis, which is not what I wanted to do. So let's just go back to the controller. And where is he now? He's over here. Let's move him over there, and 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's make him 1.2 units in the air. Just double check. Okay, so now we've got a third person controller. If I have mouse controls, you'll see he automatically moves around. The physics material will change whether your character bounces or not on it, and this is something that can become very useful later. The falling through was an issue with me accidentally putting the character in the wrong place. So this is really cool, and let's just put this at 900. No, that one stays at 1.2. The other one should be at 900. Just check. There we go. So we're close to the trees. I just want to show, as we move around here, that we will, as we get close to things, start seeing higher detail. So there's the grass textures that we painted, or the grass detail that we painted, and this is the various trees that we have. And you'll notice, if you look at the top of the screen, as the 2D sprites change to 3D sprites, it looks like the leaves and things are moving. And that's just as it works out how it should be rendering the changes and make it look smooth so it doesn't suddenly switch from a texture to a 3D model. So that's just at the very, very top of the screen that you'll notice this. Okay, so let's just stop him from running around. Now we're going to take a look at the world lighting. So let me just restart this. If you take a look, our sky area is pretty much not interesting at all in any way, and it isn't something that we really want to keep as part of our project. It's just blue. Ideally, what we would want is for there to be what's called a skybox. So this is a set of images that is rendered at a fixed distance from the camera as it moves around, and it gives you the illusion that the game world goes on to infinity. So if we go back to our camera, so here's our main camera, and this camera is being moved around by scripts that are on the third person controller. what we can do is we can add a component called a skybox. So a skybox requires a material, and I don't think I have any by default. I don't think I've got any under my assets that I can import. Let's just see. Physics materials, particles, light, character controller. Okay. So I'm going to just do this very badly and use that grass material. And if we go, there we go, clear flags, skybox. So if we go like this, hopefully we'll see our sky now has that texture. Now this is something that we're going to change. You're obviously not going to use this grass texture. I just don't readily have a skybox texture at the moment. But essentially, if I move around with my character now, you'll see the background isn't moving at all. Apart from the fact that it is a texture, and if I look around I'll see different perspectives of it, but it's all sewn together in a very specific way so that it always looks like it's the same distance from me. So that's how easy it is to add a skybox. And there was an error, and everything seems okay. Can you guys still hear me correctly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Awesome. So that's one of the cool functionalities within Unity. So let's just hop out here again quickly. And what we're going to do is, there's a message. Okay, everyone seems to be fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at some of those 3D primitives if we make them physics enabled. So I'm just going to stick a cube in here, and let me just find that. There we go. And let's move it in front of the player. What we can do here is the same way we did 2D physics. We can go component physics and add a rigid body. And the other thing that we need to do if we add a rigid body to make it fall is add a type of collider. So we still have circles, boxes, edges, and polygons. And in this case, it would just be a box. Alright. So if I run this, you'll see that the box falls down. And it doesn't have a material, so it's something that I would need to adjust myself. But it's something that we can immediately, with our controller, as a physics object in the world, interact with. So I can stand on top of it and so on. And it's as easy as that to build in these 3D physics into your game where you'd need to run over objects. But similarly, you can make things move around using physics impulses. So that basically summarizes what you would need to do for physics in 3D. It's literally just things that you drop in onto your game object and you're good to go. So at this stage, I want to take a quick break and just ask, do you guys have any questions about today's stuff so far? Okay, Sante is good, Manos is good. All good on Shashank's side. Okay. So one thing that's really cool is under, I just need to think of where it is. It's probably actually here under the terrain assets standard. Textures, ambience textures, no. There is tools that you can plug into Unity to generate random terrain heights, and I can't think of what the name of the package is. It's a free package which you drop in, and it adds in a way for you to use things like Perlin noise to generate your terrain, and it also adds a component that you can add to your terrain where you can set different heights, and then it'll automatically texture according to those different heights. So that's one thing that you could look at if you were interested in making a 3D game using nice looking terrain. And essentially, that is all the major differences between 2D and 3D in Unity. And as an added note, the layers and the cameras is also something that you can do within Unity 2D. And that actually concludes today's call content. And thank you very much for joining us today, guys. Hope it was beneficial.